Today on the Daily Scoop podcast from the Scoop News Group, the Department of Energy releases generative AI guidance for employees and contractors. And the Supreme Court rejects an effort to limit government communication on misinformation. It's Thursday, June 27th, 2024. Welcome to the Daily Scoop podcast, where you'll hear the latest news and trends facing government leaders. I'm the host of the Daily Scoop podcast, Billy Mitchell. Here are today's top headlines. Employees and contractors at the Department of Energy now have a reference guide to help them navigate use of generative AI tools at the agency, including best practices and a note that ChatGPT is available for use by request. That 61-page document was published and distributed on DOE's internal network on June 14th. A DOE spokesperson told FedScoop, the detailed reference guide constitutes the first such document on generative AI that the department has shared publicly. And while the guidance isn't considered a formal policy, it provides a window into how the DOE is thinking about the technology. Helena Fu, director of Energy's Office of Critical and Emerging Technologies and its chief AI officer, said during a panel at Scale AI's GovAI Summit on Tuesday that the guidance is, quote, a way to educate our agency and all the folks who will use it for many different purposes about what the opportunity space is and how to use it responsibly. That document includes a reference guide to best practices, existing government resources related to AI, and ideas for use cases within the department. Those potential use cases include creating voiceovers for educational videos, image generation based on descriptions, drafting an initial set of interview questions, and writing up meeting minutes from audio recordings. The document suggests that those looking to deploy generative AI conduct a privacy impact assessment, as well as tailored generative AI-focused training for employees with access to protected data and the implementation of a full lifecycle stewardship of data. The guide encourages the use of prompt engineering training and evaluating generative AI systems for potential bias, too. In other news, the U.S. Supreme Court on Wednesday rejected an effort by Republican states to sharply limit the ability of the federal government to share information with social media platforms to combat the spread of false information online, something the plaintiffs argued had resulted in censorship of conservative viewpoints. The ruling represents a major victory for the Biden administration, whose communications with social media platforms sought to limit the spread online of election and COVID-related misinformation. Those communications prompted attorneys general in Missouri and Louisiana to bring suit to limit information sharing between the government and online platforms. In the 6-3 ruling, the court concluded that the plaintiffs lack standing to bring the suit and lack sufficient evidence to prove that government communications had resulted in the restriction of online speech. The ruling overturned a previous ruling by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit that found the government had, through its regular communications and information sharing efforts, effectively coerced the platforms into censoring content. The Supreme Court threw out the case after determining the plaintiffs, 2 states and 5 individuals, had no standing to sue the federal government to obtain relief for actions taken by private companies. Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett wrote in an opinion on behalf of the majority that the plaintiffs' theories of standing depend on the platforms' actions, yet the plaintiffs do not seek to enjoin the platforms from restricting any posts or accounts. Instead, they seek to enjoin the government agencies and officials from pressuring or encouraging the platforms to suppress protected speech in the future. The court also concluded that the plaintiffs had failed to sufficiently prove that a real and immediate threat of repeated injury was imminent unless a court ruled in their favor. For more news at the intersection of the federal government and technology, visit fedscoop.com. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Daily Scoop podcast, available on all podcast platforms. If you've already rated the podcast on your platform of choice, thanks so much. High ratings and good reviews of the show help more people to find it. The Daily Scoop podcast is a production of the Scoop News Group in Washington, D.C. Adam Butler and Carlin Fisher help put the show together, and the entire Scoop News Group team contributes. We'll be back tomorrow with more top headlines. Until then, I'm your host, Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for listening.